Hey guys, in today's tutorial I'm going to teach you how to crochet a sweater. So for this video I am going to make a color block sweater, so I'll be using about 4 different colors, but you can definitely make this in one solid color. I have made one in all gray, which I will show you a clip of. The one that I made in all gray was the first one I ever made, and that's the one where I wrote my pattern for. You can see that it's very oversized, so I did use the big twist value yarn, and if you're going to be using that yarn definitely will stretch out a bit once you wash it because of the stitches are it's a little bit open when you do double crochets, so just take that into consideration. Depending on whichever type of yarn you use, you need to know how it's going to wash once you put it in the washer and dryer. And for that reason, in this video I'm going to be making a shorter sweater, and then I'm also hoping that it's going to stretch out a bit. But yeah, the one in this video is going to be color block. I actually did originally want it to be in all black and gray, but I know black is going to be hard to show on camera, so that's why I decided to do a colorful one. But I hope you guys really enjoyed this tutorial. I think it's pretty easy. The only part that's difficult is like sewing everything together, because if you watch my videos you know that I hate sewing, and it was a little bit difficult to show on camera, but I tried my best, and I hope you guys really enjoyed this tutorial. And I usually don't really crochet like clothing type items, but for this one I try to make it as easy as I can, because I really don't like to think too much when I crochet. But for this, it's definitely really easy to adjust, because as you can see in the clips, I did show you the gray sweater, which was super huge, and then this one is going to be much smaller. It's more of like a crop sweater. But also I will show you a before and after of the color block one. That one's I'm going to show you that before it's washed and then after, just to show you the difference if you're going to be using the big twist yarn. Sweater is pretty easy to customize. You're just measuring it to your own body, and the stitches we're going to be using are double crochets, single crochets. We're doing a couple back loop onlys for the rib portion, and yeah, it's pretty easy. So if you guys are interested in making one of these, I'll let you know what you'll need in the next couple of clips. I'll be using a 5.5mm crochet hook, 2 stitch markers. You will also need some scissors, a threading needle for yarn, a tape measure. In today's video, I will be making myself a color block sweater, but if you like to make one solid color, that's totally fine. Just make sure you have enough yarn. So because I'm using 4 different colors, the first one I'm going to be using is this soft gray. All of my yarn I'm using is from Big Twist, and it is the value yarn. This one is in the color soft gray, and I will be just using this color for the rib portion. For the body of my sweater, I will be using the color slate blue, and for my size, I did use about 2.5 of these. I have one arm sleeve already pre-made, and I did use a pink color. I don't remember the exact name, but it's just a light pink color from Big Twist. Then for the other sleeve, I will be going in with this purple color, and this one is in lilac. The first thing we're going to do is create the rib for our sweater. So we're going to be starting from the bottom of our sweater, and I do have a panel that I pre-made. You will need 2 of these. So you can see this gray right here is what we're going to be working on first. This bottom band right here is about 2 inches thick, but depending on if you crochet tight or loose, yours might be a little bit thicker or thinner, but you can always adjust that. You don't have to chain as much as I do, and of course I'll show you that in a minute, but right now this is what we're going to be working on. So take whatever color you choose for your band, and let's get started. Okay, so I have my gray yarn, and we need to start off with a slip knot before we create our chain. So what we're going to do, I like to take my yarn and I hold it in half just like this. Then I'll just grab onto my yarn and twist it. And then with this hand where I have the loop, I'm just going to go in and grab my yarn and pull it through. And there we have a slip knot. Then I'll just take my crochet hook, insert it inside the loop, and then pull on the yarn. And that's our slip knot. Next, we're going to create a chain. So a chain is going to be yarning over your hook and then pulling through the loop. So that was 1. I'll show that one more time. I'm going to yarn over and pull through. That's 2. So as I mentioned earlier, you can determine how thick you want your band to be. So you can see right here, this right here is where I started, and this is my chain of 9, and I will repeat that again. So I'm just going to keep doing this until I get my chain of 9, and then we're going to go back into our chain to crochet. So I have my 2. I'm just going to yarn over again and do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So this is how long my chain is, and now I'm going to single crochet back into it. So to do that, you can see this chain right here is the one closest to our hook, and I don't want to go into that. I'm going into the next one. So the second chain, this guy right here, I'm going to do 1 single crochet. So I'm going to take my crochet hook, insert it into that chain, grab this yarn and pull it through. Then I have my 2 loops on the hook. I'll yarn over and pull through both. And I'm just going to single crochet back down into the chain until I get to the other side. So I'll show that again, taking my crochet hook, inserting it into the next chain, grabbing that yarn and pulling it through. There's my 2 loops, yarning over, pulling through both. So I'm just going to continue doing that until I reach the end of the chain. And I will have 8 crochets once I'm done. I now have my 8 single crochets into this chain. So whatever number you ended up chaining, you just need to subtract 1, because remember I started off with a chain of 9 and then I went into the second chain to do the single crochet. So that's why I end up with 8 now. So we can now move on to the next round. Let's just take my crochet hook, put it back into the loop, pulling down. So what we're going to do now is chain 1. So to chain 1, you just yarn over your hook, you pull through the loop, and then you turn your work. And now we're going to be working into the back loop only. Before we crochet into the back loop only, I want to mention that I do not go into this stitch right here, so the one that's really close to my hook. You can see I chain 1 and then you see the stitch. I don't go into that corner one, I go into this one. So I'm going to, so remember, not this one, this guy right here. And then I'm going to, this is the front of the loop, I want to go into the back loop. So I'm just going to show the top view. I'm going into that stitch, into the back. I'm going to do a single crochet into the back loop only, so I'm just taking my yarn, pulling it through. There's my 2 loops on the hook, I'm yarning over and pulling through both. So now I'm just going to repeat that until I get to the other side. I'm just going into the middle of the stitch, out to the back, grabbing this yarn, pulling it through, yarning over and pulling through both. Let me show that one more time. So going into my next stitch, going into the middle, pushing out through the back, grabbing that yarn, pulling it through. There's my 2 loops, I'm yarning over and pulling through both. And then you can see it's starting to create a little ridge right here. So I'm just going to do that until I reach the end. So now that I'm towards the end, I have to go also into the stitch, this corner stitch right here. So I'm just going to go into that one and do my last single crochet into the back loop only. And then I'm just going to pull it out really quick so I can count with you guys. Okay, so from this point on, I should have a stitch count of 8 throughout the whole thing, because remember we started off with a chain of 9 and then I went into the second chain to do my crochets. Whatever you have, just make sure you're counting the same number throughout this whole band. So let me show you how to count this. So this right here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and for me I do count a chain as a stitch, so this is going to be 8. So remember to count your chain as a stitch and remember to also crochet into it. Okay, so this was round 3 or row 3. I'm going to show you it one more time, because you're just going to be repeating that step until you get the length of your band. So what we're going to do is first start off by chaining 1. So I just yarn over my hook, pull through, and then I'll turn my work, and then I'm going to single crochet into the back loop only. So remember, we do not go into this corner stitch right here. You're going into this one. Let me see if I can get a better view. Not this guy at the corner. You're going into this next one. And you just want to do a back loop only single crochet. So here's the top view. I'm taking my crochet hook, going in. There's my single crochet. And I'm just going to repeat that until I get back to this side. So just going into the middle, pushing out through the back. There's the 2 loops, yarning over, pulling through both. So again, just take your crochet hook, push it in through the middle, out through the back, grab that yarn and pull it through. There's your 2 loops, yarn over, pull through both. So now I'm just going to keep doing that until I get to the end of this row. Okay, so I'm close to the end, and remember I said the chain counts as a stitch, and if it counts as a stitch, that means you also have to single crochet into it. So there's my chain. I'm going to go right into it, just push through, grab that yarn, pull it through. There's the 2 loops, yarning over, pulling through both. I'm just going to remove my hook really quick and show you this is what it currently looks like. And I actually will show you the row one more time, but basically you're just going to do this throughout the whole thing to create your rib. Okay, to show you one more time, let's first start off by yarning over your hook, pulling through, then you turn your work, Remember, you do not go into that corner one, you go into the next one. And you're going to do a single crochet into the back loop only, which means taking your hook, pushing it into the middle, out through the back, grabbing that yarn and pulling it through. There's your 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through both. And then you just repeat that until you get to the end of this row. And then we will just keep repeating this. Okay, so I'm towards the end again. I just want to show you how to do the corners. So here is my second to last stitch. This one is the 7th. And then I'm going into the chain. So here's my chain here. I'm going to go into that and do a single crochet. And then now when you repeat this, you make it as long as you want if you want a little bit of a looser fit. But for the one I'm making, I'm doing it until I have about 36 of these little ridges right here. So I'm going to finish that until I get my 36 and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back and this is how long my band is. I actually need to do one more row. So I'll show this one on camera. So I'm just going to go in by yarning over, pulling through to create my chain. And then I'm going to turn my work. And then I'm going to single crochet into the back loop only. Remember, not going into that corner stitch. We're going into the next one over and we're just single crocheting into the back loop only. And then after this row, I'll be done with my band, or at least this part of the band. Okay, so I made it back. I'm going into that chain still. And now I'm done with this row. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to single crochet this top band right here because I want something to be able to crochet into when I move forward. So you can see these ridges at the top right here. We want to just make a row of single crochets. So what I'm going to do first, I'm not going to create a chain or anything. I'm just going to go straight into single crocheting. And what I'm going to do here is just single crochet into this corner stitch. I'm just doing one single crochet there. Now for my first panel of the sweater, this one right here, I already know that I need to create a chain or a single crochet row of 70 because, you know, this one is already pre-made. But when you're single crocheting the top, just make sure you keep track of how many you do because you need it to be the exact same for the other panel. Okay, so one thing I want to mention before we keep crocheting into this is that, I don't know if I mentioned this in the beginning of the video because I do finish the sweater and then film the intro last, but I don't make a lot of clothing items, so I'm pretty sure there's other people who can tell you like how exactly they go into this. But when I personally do it, I go into whatever I feel like looks right. So sometimes I go into this open space here, or sometimes I go on top of the ridge, but I feel like it always depends because sometimes it, like going into this stitch right here, or this like top part right here instead of this, it might make the rib look a little bit too loose or too tight. Not sure if I'm making any sense, but basically, you know, where you do your next single crochet, if it stretches out like too far, like say I go into like, watch, let me show you. So I'm going to single crochet into this stitch right here. And it's just way too far from where that first single crochet I did. So this one right here. And then I single crocheted into this stitch right here. It's like way too far and it's pulling my stitches like too far in. It's going to make it a little bit too tight and I don't want that. So I'm just going to remove it. And you're just going to single crochet into whatever you think feels right. So I'm going to go into this one right here. So this opening, I'm doing a single crochet and I'll just take it out really quick to show you. And you see it doesn't stretch it too far. You can see that it's next to that first single crochet I did and it sits perfectly. It's not pulling inward too much and it's not too loose. So I'm just going to continue single crocheting all the way until I get to the end of this rib portion right here. So I'm just going to go in and single crochet, and I have to make sure that I have 70 because I already know how much I have. But once you know how much you need, remember to write it down because you need it to have the exact same number on the other side. So I just need to have 70. Remember, we're just single crocheting the top. And I will meet you back once I get to the other side. Before I continue going on, I just want to show you what it currently looks like. So you can see that it lays nice and flat. It's not pulling inward as I mentioned earlier. And also it's not too loose that my stitches are way too close together. So just keep single crocheting until you get to the end of this row. And I know it's going to be a little bit hard because, you know, these aren't exactly stitches at the top here, so it might be a little bit hard to crochet into, but just poke your hook through, do your single crochets, and then I'll meet you back to color change. Well, if you're not color changing, you can keep the same color, but then we're going to move on to the top body portion. Okay guys, so I just finished single crocheting the top of this rib border, and what I'm going to do next is color change. But if you're not going to color change, just keep your yarn and you're going to chain 2. I'm going to show it with the gray just so no one's confused. So if you're staying with your same color, just chain 2. So what you're going to do is yarn over your hook, pull through, and then yarn over one more time and pull through. And then you're going to turn your work, and then you're going to be doing double crochets. But first, let me change the color of my yarn. And then, so if you're color changing, let's go ahead and let me just remove this first. So what we're going to do is just, let's grab our scissors, but first, let me just make this loop big enough. So it doesn't need to be too big, but I'm just pulling it out so it doesn't get lost. And what we're doing if we're color changing is, let's cut off some of this yarn. And let me grab my second color. So I'm taking my second color, which is a slate blue, and what I'm going to do is just create a loop. Now, if you want to make this easier, you can just insert it in and tie a knot, but I'm going to create a loop first. And then I'm just going to insert it into this gray loop. So I'm just going to push it through. And you see I have that little loop there. I'm just going to take my gray yarn and pull down on it. And there you have the loop. Then you can take the end of the blue and the gray and tie it together. You can do that now if you want it more secure, but I'm going to do it after I do a couple double crochets. Okay, so if you want to wait like I do, what we're going to do is just take our crochet hook, insert it into the blue loop, and just pull down on it. And then we're going to chain 2. So what you're going to do is yarn over your hook, pull through for 1, yarn over again and pull through for 2. And then now let's turn our work. And then we're going to do a couple double crochets. Actually, before we do a couple double crochets, let's tie these 2 pieces together now because I actually just want to hide them before we keep going. Now you could hide them later, but I feel like we should just do it now. So let's just tie these 2 pieces together. I'm gonna do it 2 times. Just tying a knot, and then that way we can hide them as we do our double crochet. So let me take my hook back into the loop, and now we're going to do double crochets. So when you do your double crochet, it's the same thing as we did with the rib. You don't go into that corner stitch, you go into this next one. And while we're going into that next stitch, let's take this yarn and you're going to go over it. So let's do our double crochet. Well, technically we're going under it. Okay, so then you're going to, I'm going to move this so you can see I'm going into that second stitch. And then I'm going to push through that chain or that stitch right there. And then grab that blue yarn and then pull it through. I have 3 loops on the hook. I'm going to yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. Okay, so now you can see that this yarn right here is being stuck in between that stitch and where the top of the single crochet row is, because that's where we're going to hide it. And we can repeat that again. So depending on how long your yarn pieces are, you're just going to keep crocheting over it, well, under it basically. I'm saying under and over, but I'm just confusing myself because technically I'm going under to crochet, but it's still crocheting over it. But anyways, let's go in with a double crochet again. So let's yarn over our hook. We're going to our next stitch, so this one right here, and just pushing it through out to the other side, then grabbing my yarn, pulling it through. I have 3 loops on the hook, yarning over, pulling through the first 2, yarn over, and pull through the next 2. And then you're just basically doing a double crochet throughout this whole thing. So I'll show that again. We're going to yarn over our hook first, and then we're going to take our hook and insert it into the next stitch. We're grabbing our yarn, pulling it through. We have 3 loops on the hook. I'm yarning over, pulling through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the last two. Now if you find you're having a hard time crocheting over this, don't worry about it. You can deal with it later, but I just find that it's kind of nice to hide it away. Let's just keep doing our double crochets by yarning over, going into our next stitch, taking the yarn, pulling it through. We have our 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the next 2, and then we're just going to keep doing that all the way until we get to the other side. So you can see I'm now just working over this gray yarn, and I'm just going to keep it there. I could technically just cut some of it off, but I just kind of don't feel like it right now. But yeah, I'm just going to keep double crocheting until I get to the other side. So now that I'm not crocheting over any yarn pieces, I'll show you the double crochet again in case I wasn't that clear earlier. But to do a double crochet, you're just yarning over your hook. Then you're going through a stitch, grabbing this yarn, pulling it through. We have 3 loops on our hook. You yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the next 2. And then I'll show that one more time before I reach the end. I'm just going to yarn over my hook, go into the next stitch, grab that yarn, pull it through. We have 3 loops on our hook. We're yarning over, pulling through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the next 2. And then now I'm just going to repeat that until I reach the corner, and then I'll show you how to do the corner. Okay guys, so I made it towards the end of this row, and I just wanted to show you me crocheting it into the last stitch. So just make sure that when you're crocheting this, remember how in that gray color I had you do the top right here, and I had a 70 count. Whatever you have on that count of that top row you did, you have to make sure you have the same number with the new color you did. If you didn't have a new color, just make sure you have the same stitch count. So remember that gray I did earlier, I had 70, so whatever you have, just make sure you have 70. I know I just repeated myself, but yeah. Okay, so now I'm just going to do my 70th stitch into this one here. So I'm doing my double crochet by yarning over, going through that stitch, grabbing this yarn, pulling it through. I have my 3 loops on the hook. I'm yarning over, pulling through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. And this is what we're going to be repeating the whole time. So I'm going to demonstrate this again, but remember we started off by chaining 2. So let's go ahead and do that by yarning over your hook, pulling through for 1, yarn over, pull through again for 2. And then you turn your work. So remember, just we're going to be repeating this. So chain 2, turn your work, and then double crochet. So we're doing a double crochet throughout this whole blue piece. So now that we chained our 2, turn our work, let's double crochet into this. Now remember, I don't go into this corner stitch right here. Now I know some people do go into that, but I personally don't, because I find my work to come out straighter if I don't go into it. But yeah, that's the reason why I do that. I know someone commented on my other video asking why I don't go into that stitch, because they always do that, but it's just my personal preference that I don't go into this chain spot. And then I'm gonna go into this one instead. So let's yarn over, going into the stitch right here, pull the loop through, or pull the yarn through. I have my 3 loops on the hook. I'm yarning over, pulling through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. So now I'm just going to continue on doing a double crochet throughout this whole thing, and then I'll be back to show you the corner side one last time before I go off camera to finish the full length. So actually, let me just show the double crochet again, just to be a little bit thorough. So I'm going to yarn over my hook, go through the next stitch, pull this yarn through, 3 loops on my hook, yarning over, pulling through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. So now I'll just meet you back until I get to the end of this, and then once we finish this length portion of the body, we can move on to the neck. Okay guys, so I made it towards the end of this row, and I'll demonstrate this one last time. So I'm going into my chain spot. So remember, I always crochet into my chain, and I'm going to do that by first yarning over. We're doing my double crochet still, and we're going into this chain space, grabbing this yarn, pulling it through. We have our 3 loops on the hook. We're going to yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. And then remember, if you're confused on what to go into, just make sure you have the same stitch count in each row. So next we're going to repeat this again by starting off by chaining 2. So let's yarn over, pull through for 1, yarn over, pull through for 2, and then we're going to turn our work. And now we're going to double crochet into this row as well. So you're just doing a double crochet throughout this whole thing. Let's first start off by, remember, not going into this space right here. You're going into that second one. So let's yarn over, go through this stitch, grab that yarn, pull it through. We have our 3 loops on the hook. Let's yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. And then let's repeat that. So let's yarn over our hook, going into the next stitch, pulling this yarn through. We have our 3 loops on the hook. We're yarning over, pulling through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2 for our double crochet. And then I'm just going to repeat this until I get the length that I want. Before I go off camera to finish the length of this, I want to mention that for this top that I'm making today, it is going to be a crop top, well, a crop sweater, because I find that with this big twist yarn, now I've made the other sweater in gray. I'm not sure if I'm going to show it in this video because it's kind of ruined now. The other sweater I made, my dog nails actually got into it, so I haven't worn that in a while because that was kind of traumatizing. So let me just tell the story really quick since this is just double crochets. So let me actually double crochet while I tell this story. So the other sweater I made, I haven't made this tutorial in a while. I actually finished my pattern like in January or something, but I was kind of traumatized because when I wore that sweater like almost every day since, you know, we're just staying home nowadays, and don't worry, I do wash it. But yeah, so my dog jumped on me one day and her nail got caught because, you know, these let me show you, these double crochets right here, you know, they have these open spaces, and her nail got caught in it and she was screaming so loud, and I got so scared, and I was like, oh my god, I can never wear this sweater again, because that just scared me so much. And I feel like ever since then I just didn't want to touch this project. But yeah, so I've had that panel I showed you earlier, the blue panel and the sleeve. I had this for like a couple months, but I just haven't been working on it because, you know, that thing happened. But yeah, so with the big twist yarn, it's not obviously not the yarn's fault, but when I wash it, I do find that it stretches more when it's a double crochet. Like it gets a little bit looser. And so I think maybe in the beginning of this video I might insert a clip. Again, I haven't filmed the intro yet, so that's why I'm mentioning it now, but in the beginning of this video I might have inserted the clip where I did where I washed it, so you'll see how it looks after. But yeah, so I do make this shorter now, but I feel like when I wash it, it might stretch out a bit, so we'll see what happens. But you know, whatever yarn you're using, just make sure that you know how it works in the wash and everything. So for big twist yarn, I know it says you can't dry it in the like tumble dry it, but I have done it before and it works out fine. So that's what I do when I make clothes with this yarn. But yeah, so I just wanted to mention that really quick. But this top for me is going to be shorter, and I just hope that it stretches, but I'm not sure if I'm going to wear it that much because man, that was so scary. Like when she screamed, it was so loud. But anyways, I'm going to finish the length of this part and then I'll be back. So I'll just keep doing however many rows you want, and then I'll be right back. Hey guys, so I'm back and I'm actually filming this on a new day because I didn't get to finish the length in one time slot, but here I am now with the length done, and I'm not sure if you can tell, but this actually isn't too long. I do wish, or I did wish that I made it longer, but I already finished one panel, so I can't go back now. But what we're going to do now is work on the neck. Okay, so for the neck portion, I'm going to actually be doing that in part 2, so I'll see you guys in part 2.